Welcome everyone. Today we have with us Colin Tipping. And if you don't know him, you probably know the name of his best-selling book, Radical Forgiveness. And also, the Radical Forgiveness isn't just a book, it is a philosophy, it is a healing modality, it is a way of life, it is a way to connect your spiritual self to your present day and to really live in the moment. He is an author, he is a speaker, he has workshops, he works with couples, and I want to thank you so much for being here and granting me this interview because I have a personal as well as a professional investment in the work that you have shared with people. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. It's good to be with you.
So I want to first share for the listeners my own experience because as opposed to someone who is just interviewing because it's a great, wonderful topic, I had my own experience with Mr. Tipping as well. So not personally, but with Radical Forgiveness. So what happened with me is that when my mother passed away almost 20 years ago now, on her deathbed, she said, life is really about loving and forgiving. And I thought I knew what that meant, but I really did not know at all what that meant, to be honest. So what happened was, years later, there was a falling out after my mother's passing, and none of the kids in the family were connected. So I stumbled upon the book and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try this. You know, what have I got to lose? So I had not talked to my brother in 7 years at that moment. So I went through the Radical Forgiveness worksheets and read the book, and literally within 10 minutes, my brother had emailed me. Now, you can say coincidence, but I felt a shift when I worked on that forgiveness. And it wasn't necessarily that I was forgiving him, I was forgiving the situation. So now, Mr. Tipping, you probably hear this kind of story all of the time. So can you tell me more about the stories that you do hear? And maybe they're not all instant, but just some of the feedback that you have received.
Well, to pick up on your story about your brother, that happens all the time, and people say, well, that surely can't be coincidence. Well, it really is not, and the reason it is not is that Radical Forgiveness works at the spiritual level, at the energetic level. So when you do a worksheet, and frankly, when you do a worksheet, a Radical Forgiveness worksheet, your mind says this is stupid. How can this change anything? But your spiritual intelligence picks it up, and it changes your energy field. And as you know, or as your listeners probably know, there is no time or spatial restriction on energy. The energy will always flow where it wants to flow. Mm-hmm. So in your case, what happened is that as soon as you changed your energy around the situation, not even about your brother, about the situation, as you just said, that energy went straight to your brother. And subconsciously, he picked it up. And that's what happens all the time with Radical Forgiveness. You don't have to be near anybody. The person could be dead, as a matter of fact. It doesn't make any difference. It still works. Because ultimately, it's you're forgiving, of course. Mm-hmm. Or you're the beneficiary of forgiveness. And whether your brother or whomever picks it up, of course, is up to them, because that's their journey too. Mm-hmm. So we're not doing it to make them do anything. Mm-hmm. Certainly not to give you a call, but the idea that somebody will call you within a very short space of time after you've done the worksheet is so common.
Wow.
That it's ordinary.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it was definitely, I've told so many people about it. I recommend clients, friends, everyone. Now, you also work with couples, and I know in Radical Forgiveness, for those who are not aware, it's really about shifting away from the victim mode. So could you explain a little bit of that first before we start talking about couples?
Okay, so I guess what I should do is try to make a distinction between traditional forgiveness and radical forgiveness, because really there's a huge difference. And it boils down to there are 5 steps or stages in the radical forgiveness process, and the first 3 are equivalent to traditional forgiveness, but number 4 creates a big departure. So let me tell you what they are very quick. The first stage is to tell the story. So, what happened? That's first step. The second one is to feel the feelings about what happened. Angry, sad, resentful, whatever those feelings are. It's essential that we do feel them and get in touch with them. It's no good pushing them away. That's what a lot of people do. They push it away and they say, yes, I've forgiven, but they really haven't. They've just buried it. So it's important that we do get in touch with those feelings. Now, step number 3 is really as far as traditional forgiveness can go, and that's what we call collapsing the story. And in that step, what we do, we sort of step back from the situation and say, let me see if I can understand what happened here. Why did this person do that to me? Or what would it be like if I had that situation? Would I have done the same thing? So it's a more analytical, reflective step. And it's usually you don't usually do this when you're in the heat of the anger, because you're just not in that place. This is something you do when you're reflecting back about it after some time. You calm down, and then you have to ask yourself the question. What interpretations did I put on this that really weren't there?
Right.
Did I take it too personally? Did that person really meant to hurt me, or was it a cry for help? There's all sorts of things that we bring to that step, which what I say are the best of human nature. It's where we can bring mercy and compassion, empathy, all of those finer qualities that we have as human beings to bear. But it doesn't get the person off the hook in the sense that we still feel that we are the victim and that something bad happened there.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay? And that's the limit to traditional forgiveness. We never let go of the idea that thing happened and it was that thing, and and I'm a victim.
Yes, yes. And does that happen with also in therapy, which I often tell people that, you're filled with potential, not pathology, but therapy tends to look at what's wrong with someone. And
exactly.
That's really quite a negative. I don't see how that could actually ever be positive, because it's a label then. My child has ADHD. I've been abused. These are all labels and victim in a lot of ways. So
that's right. It's victim language. You're absolutely right there. But that's how we're taught to think, and that forgiveness just means, I'm going to try to let it go. I try to release it. He may have been an abused person himself. So all that's good, but it doesn't take you very far. It doesn't really get you beyond victimhood, or out of victim land, as I call it. Okay. So the fourth step, though, this is where the radical forgiveness makes a huge leap, because it says, this happened and it hurt, but I'm recognizing that there was a purpose in this at the spiritual level, to the extent that I'm willing to be open to the possibility that this is exactly what my soul wanted to happen, for me to grow and learn and to evolve as a spiritual being. So in that sense, then, once we go there, we're opening up to the possibility that this thing didn't happen to us, it happened for us.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
It happened for us as a way for us to grow and learn, not just as a spiritual being, but oftentimes as a human being too. But we're really talking spirituality when we go to this fourth step. Radical forgiveness is a spiritual interpretation of the situation, so that people are able to say, wow, I must have created this situation or co-created this situation for a reason. Therefore, nothing wrong happened. Therefore, there's nothing to forgive.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's the big step.
That's
the step that the mind says, no, that can't be true, but your spiritual intelligence, and you always know that your spiritual intelligence has picked it up because your body feels different.
Oh, it's a huge shift. It's huge.
Yes. The body gets it, because that's the antenna of your spiritual intelligence, and it's your body that's sending out that energy field that I talked about earlier on to whomever is on the other end of this forgiveness process. Okay, and then the final and fifth step is to do something physical, like doing some breath work, or going out for a walk, or writing a worksheet, or whatever it is, to integrate that new story, that new interpretation into the physical body. Okay. So that's where we are with radical forgiveness. So when we're talking about relationships, though, if people haven't got to that place, they're still coming from both of them probably are blaming each other, both of them feeling victimized, and that's why the relationship, if there's no real good intervention in the way that I'm talking about it with radical forgiveness, it will always end up with either one or the other dominating, manipulating, those kind of things that go with being a victim of being and feeling victimized. Because you always respond when you feel victimized. You always respond in an aggressive way in order to protect you. So
right.
you set up what we call an attack defense cycle.
Okay.
And that's what you see in a lot of relationships. And it's very sad, really, because if only they knew that what was happening was exactly what both of the people in this relationship had set themselves up to do in order to learn and grow.
Right.
So the principle there is that all relationships are for healing. That's the purpose of relationships, whether they last 10 minutes or 40 years.
Wow.
And we bring two people into our lives in order for us to work with those people, healing each other by going through these processes of, see, what happens when we attract someone into our life, we're doing it in order for them to trigger our wounds, our misperceptions, our thoughts about being a victim. So that's why sometimes, usually after about 4 years, it's usually 4 years into the relationship that really, that starts to really kick in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
now, do they bring, is it really that we, okay, so when we're children, we bring in some of our assumptions, if we were hurt as children in some way or perceived to hurt, that we bring in some of those assumptions. And, I read that, you brought up a really good point in the book, in the Radical Forgiveness book, of that just because our needs are not being met does not mean that the other person doesn't love us. And I see that a lot with couples, they quickly assume that the other person doesn't love them because they're not happy.
Right.
So what happens there, and how do they get through that?
Well, the third thing I understand is that happiness is not the purpose of a relationship, not the primary purpose. Okay, the happiness comes when you really realize what's actually going on, and recognizing that nobody is doing anything bad. It's all a setup for each of us to be healing each other. Now, once you know that, then you can get over these things extremely quickly.
Wow.
Which would otherwise take you years to get beyond. Because the wound that's being activated, the childhood wound that you were talking about, abuse or whatever it is being activated through your partner's activity towards you. But instead of seeing it as an attack, we see it as an opportunity. So, oh my God, he's being aggressive, or he's being rejecting, because there's a part of me that I haven't healed yet from childhood, that when I was rejected by my father or something like that. Now, here's an opportunity for me to heal that particular thing by forgiving my husband or spouse or whomever it is that's activating this thing. So you don't have to go back. This is the other good thing about radical forgiveness. You don't have to do therapy. You don't have to go all the way back to find out what the thing was and relive the trauma and all that. No.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Yeah.
You just forgive the person who's presenting it to you now, because that's your big opportunity to say, oh, that's a wound that he's representing here. I accept that's what it is, and I love and accept this person for giving me this opportunity to heal. You don't have to say this, by the way. It's not like you have to be like some saint, but you just know that that's what's going on. And to really do it well, you do a worksheet, a radical forgiveness worksheet on that particular thing, and it clears the energy all the way back to that original wound.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, it's just so amazing in that sense. It's so efficient because, so many people have years and years and years of therapy of trying to relive the trauma and redoing it. You don't have to do that.
I think it took me, when I did the one years ago, I think it took me less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sobbing, But, it's amazing how in the beginning you're like, oh, I don't know how this is going to work. But 2 seconds into it, you're sobbing and feeling this release. And at the end, you actually feel lighter and cleaner, pure. And it is such a shift that it is very hard to describe, but it is not time consuming. It is way less time than even one session of therapy. It is incredible,
Yeah.
Now, what about with couples? I know that there's a lot to discuss, but with couples in general, I know that a lot of your work you were aware that people that either had cancer or other physical ailments were really coming towards radical forgiveness. So when you see couples, do you notice any, that the couples, maybe have headaches or digestive issues or whatever, and as their marriage or partnership clears up, that their health starts to tip in a different situation? Or
There's no question that the radical forgiveness process is going to help you with any health issue and prevent health issues coming up, because most health issues are, in fact, the result of having repressed pain, emotional pain, and toxic ideas about who you are and what life is all about and so on. So when you do this work, it's automatically going to have a beneficial effect on your health. So, but let me come to the relationship issue.
Yes,
because,
definitely.
There's a spiritual side of it. Once you realize, and preferably that both parties realize, that's the best idea. But sometimes it just takes one of you to do the work if the other one's resistant. But once you realize that, then it gets a whole lot easier. I mean, my wife and I, we've been married now 25 years, and I know full well, and she will say the same thing, that we would not be together today if we didn't have radical forgiveness. Because we mirror so much for each other.
Oh, okay.
You see, we're mirrors. And so she'll come up with some sort of an attack or something, and I know it's a projection, so I just don't take it personally. I realize that she is giving me an opportunity to look at that and say, oh, that's a part of me.
Okay.
And as soon as we do that, we just go into a giggling fit because we see what's happening.
Yeah.
You see, instead of getting all terribly upset now and getting all bitchy with each other, we say, oh, okay, I'm looking in the mirror. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I love that part of myself. The principle is, if you spot it, you got it. You see, it's projection. It's the projection thing. Now, the other part of the relationship thing is that once you've got that settled, that you know what's going on, then you have to go back into the relationship and look at how it started in the first place, because it may have started originally out of this need to provoke each other. So is the relationship now over, or can we expand this relationship? And my book is called Expanding into Love, or at least one of my books is called Expanding into Love. And what that means is that once you know that this is what relationships are all about, that they're about for healing, now we can focus on the happiness side of it and expanding our love away from domination, control, manipulation, and all those other things that tend to be in the situation in the first part of your relationship, into much more about freedom, respect, all of those qualities now that enable you to move towards a more agape type of love, unconditional love, right? So that's what I mean by expanding. But then you have to go back and say, okay, now, up to now, I haven't really thought about my boundaries. You may have given yourself away a lot. So when I do the couples in workshop, we talk a lot about boundaries, about our values, about what it was like when we first got together. Are they the same, whether the same then as they are now, and so on. So it's a case of assessing one's relationship and say, okay, what have we got here? What is this relationship about? Is there enough in here now to keep going? If not, shall we call it a day? You know, most times though, once you get this idea that we were in this for a reason, the love deepens, and people, generally speaking, stay in it. I'm not saying you should stay in it or not stay, or not go. In fact, my couples in crisis workshop, the whole idea of it is to get people together and say, okay, let's work for a whole 2.5 days here, making a decision. Do we make it or break it?
Okay.
Do we stay in the relationship or not? Let's get clarity about what's there. So that's when we start talking about boundaries. What do you actually want in this relationship? What don't you want, or what are you not willing to have in this relationship, and so on? Because when we get married, normally we don't have those conversations.
No, not at all.
We're so imbued with the idea that we're in love and everything's going to work out beautifully and so on, which it never does, because it shouldn't. The whole purpose of this is to bring up some stuff for our healing, so we've got to move through that. But once we have done that, that's the time to say, okay, let's step back and look at this relationship, and let's see what we've got. Let's see what we want to keep. Let's see what we can expand. And if we can't, we just love each other and say thank you and move on. Okay? So that's really my whole approach to relationships. It requires the radical forgiveness perspective first.
Okay. Because
without that, everybody's just talking about being victims and scapegoats and accusing each other and so on. So it's a waste of time. So when I work with couples, that I need them to understand the radical forgiveness perspective first. So that's why they would want to read that book or look at the website.
Let me ask you, what about when I have, there's so many people that have been betrayed and they feel very angry. They tend to be, of course, people that have been betrayed numerous times.
Yeah.
So what happens with someone? Have you ever had a situation where someone is saying, no, I did nothing wrong, they cheated on me? How do you get that person who is resistant? Or is it the other person that really works on it? Or I guess what I'm asking is, how does somebody... Betrayal seems to be such a heavy issue in relationships.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's very customized, but how do you wrap someone's head around not being a victim in that situation?
Well, let me go back to those first 5 steps that I talked about earlier on. So when somebody comes to me in that situation, especially if the other person is there, we just go through the story first.
Okay.
What is the betrayal? Was it infidelity, or has he had an affair, or she had an affair, or what? Because it's I don't want to be sexist about this, but so we go through that process, and it's going to take some time if somebody's still very, very hurt and very upset to get to step 4. I can't do that if somebody's coming to me and they've not heard about radical forgiveness. Radical forgiveness is not an intervention technique. It's not something that you can introduce immediately. If somebody's in a lot of pain and anguish, you have to take your time getting to it. You can't just say, oh, well, it was perfect. This is what happens. You created this man and he had an affair and that's what you wanted. You can't say that to someone who's in a lot of pain.
Right.
You have to be very careful. That's why I say with my Couples in Crisis workshop, I need them to have studied radical forgiveness to some degree, so that that they're not still in that space, that they've worked through all that, and they're just trying to decide whether to move on or not. But one of the things that helps people is that somebody who's been betrayed, if it's a betrayal thing like an affair. My first question is, has this ever happened to you before? Anything like it? And usually you'll see a whole string of things that have happened of the same kind of ideas. You're always being betrayed, let down. Somebody made a promise to them, didn't fulfill it. All the way back to childhood, that one of their parents made a promise and didn't come through or something like that, that the child felt betrayed. Once people see that there's a pattern in their life, then you can say to yourself, do you think you might have created this pattern? Is it just accident that it's happened that you keep on being betrayed? No, it's not. There's something else going on here. Okay, so you're introducing an idea that there is something more than meets the eye that's causing causing you to attract someone in who will betray you, because that's what you actually want, for 2 reasons. One, to heal the original wound. And secondly, to help you grow spiritually. So there's 2 things being given here. Okay, so once people see that, oh, Yeah. Well, and I will say to them, it's all betrayal. There's nothing here about being abused, is there, in your pattern? Yet somebody else might have abuse in their pattern.
Oh,
you see?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we don't usually mix all these things up. We keep reproducing one thing over and over and over. People stealing from you or, doing those kind of things. So that's usually an opening for people to see, well, there's something more than meets the eye here. I wonder what this is. And so then we can start talking about, well, maybe this person has come into your life for a reason. That these people are doing this to help you do something, help you heal something.
Right.
So, so you introduce the idea slowly and carefully without making them feel that they're fools, that they haven't seen it.
Yes.
And this may take several sessions to get to the point where you can go to that step number 4 and say, well, you know what, let's reframe this story and see it differently. And the way I usually bridge that is, would you be willing to see it different? Would you be willing to be open to seeing another way of looking at this? That's when I've thought to myself, now she or he is ready to see this differently. And if they say yes, then I introduce the idea of radical forgiveness.
Okay, wonderful. Now, what can people expect when they go to your Couples in Crisis and some of your other in-person and even maybe some of your online programs? What can they expect? Would they have studied radical forgiveness already? Do you prep them on that? How do they, what are the prerequisites to work with you one-on-one then?
Okay, the only one-on-one really that I do is the Couples in Crisis workshop, and that's up to 4 couples at a time.
Wow.
I don't do much one-on-one now. I travel so much I can't really do that. And that's the only one really where there is a prerequisite that they have to come with some knowledge, not deep, but enough to be aware that they're not coming just to bitch at each other.
Right. A lot of people do that when they go to counseling. They're coming in to win. They're not getting that it's about the we stuff and.
Yeah.
So, so they have to have that understanding that it's about closure and togetherness and not to pick sides and so forth. Okay.
That's right. To make a decision, make it or break it. I actually call the first weekend, make it or break it. And then we follow up with a weekend, another meetup, not necessarily a weekend, but another meetup a month later to put the decision into action.
Nice. I love that. Okay, great.
Okay.
Now,
but that's the only one. But the workshops that we do, we have one coming up in May called the Radical Forgiveness Solution. Because the fact is that radical forgiveness is a solution to almost any situation or any problem you have. Because once you realize the true nature of the problem, which is not how you normally think about it, then it's easily solvable.
Yes.
Even things like money, when we have money problems, well, there's a reason why money is tight with us or having money problems because of some thoughts or beliefs that we have around money that can be really eradicated and gotten out of the way with a radical forgiveness approach. All right.
How about working with children as well?
But that workshop requires no prerequisite at all.
Okay.
Come to the workshop not knowing a thing about it, and you'll come away from that workshop knowing everything about it.
Okay, great. How about children? What about, do people ever work with, a lot of people go to therapy or support groups, or even schools have groups where parents are learning how to deal with their children. And really, it seems like they just need to accept their children. Have you ever had, I'm sure you have, people that are working on radical forgiveness in connection to their children as well?
Yes. I mean, I don't run classes for children per se, but nearly always with parents who are having trouble with their children, the first thing to understand is that the child is teaching the parent.
Yes.
Right. Because the child's soul is in a sense more innocent and pure than the parents, because they've been indoctrinated by religion and politics and God knows what else. So their energy field is not as clear as the child. And the child's behavior, while it may look like trouble, is really there to teach us. So if we approach it from that point of view and do the worksheets on that, I have a book called, my latest book actually is called 25 Practical Uses for Radical Forgiveness.
Ooh, I don't have that one yet.
Yeah, 25 practical uses for radical forgiveness. And it's and there's a chapter in there about how to apply this to the parenting, to the stresses and strains of parenting.
Oh, I love that.
Because it's not, I mean, being a parent is not easy. I've had 3, I know.
It's very hard, yes.
But and at every stage of their development, even to the point where the child becomes the parent. When you become old and decrepit, the child is still there, and oftentimes becomes the parent, and you become the child as
Wow.
as dementia.
Yes.
But a lot of those situations can be very cruel.
Yes.
Especially when there's money involved and all that kind of thing. So the children can become very cruel at a late age, and especially if they're arguing over the money with all the other siblings, it can become terrible. Yeah. So forgiveness can be very helpful. Radical forgiveness can be very helpful at every stage of the parent-child relationship, from baby right up to the other end.
So how can people get in touch with you? Your website and so forth. What is the best way that you prefer for people to connect with you?
Well, the website is very easy. It's to remember. It's just radicalforgiveness.com. And right on the homepage, there's an opportunity to actually try it. It only takes about, I think it's 7 minutes. It says something like, forgive now. There's a little square and you'll see forgive now. Click here. And you'll hear me take you through a little process of radical forgiveness. And you will feel different at the end of those 7 minutes, I promise you.
Wow.
And then once you've done that, you say, oh, okay, I need to get more of this. So then we offer a load of free stuff. Free worksheets, fantastic. Free online worksheets. I mean, there's a load of stuff in there that's free, as well as more comprehensive online programs that you do pay for, but there's about 6 or 7 of those, and they're all, we've got one for forgiving parents and others. We've got one for forgiving your workmates.
Oh, that's a biggie.
We got
get a lot of that in therapy.
We got one for radical money, radical weight loss. We got
wonderful
a number of those. So once you get browsing through that website and see what is available, and of course we train people to become coaches. So as you know, yes. We love to get people to be able to show other people how to use these tools.
Oh, it's so important. So important. Yeah. I think we are in such a time where, I do believe that when my mother, she was always a wonderful spiritual person, but, on her deathbed saying nothing matters but love and forgiveness. And I just remember thinking as a younger person, yeah, I can see that. But now I look back and I'm like, whoa, that was very profound and very important. And it is something that everybody needs to incorporate into their lives. And right. If you're a teacher, into how you teach. And it's just, I don't really see how we can go further and evolve spiritually, psychologically, developmentally without that. So very, very important. Well, I don't want to wear out my welcome here. Thank you. You've given me more time than I've even asked. Thank you so much. And again, radicalforgiveness.com. Thank you so much. And we will be connecting everyone. You can go to the website and connect directly with Radical Forgiveness and everything that they offer. And thank you so much, Mr. Tipping, for all of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.